I see 14 people. It seems to have quieted down. Morning, everybody. Welcome. As you know, our focus today is around BEE compliance, and Rene is going to talk more about the recent changes in the regulations to give us an understanding of what's new. So that's been her focus. Rene, I'm going to ask you to also then say a few words about why you know what you're talking about, and then get into your presentation. Our rules, if everybody please remember, this is intended to be an interactive session. So please do engage with Rene, but do it via the chat box. So if you've got any questions or any comments, please put them into the chat box, and then I will moderate and I'll bring them to Rene's attention so that you can then respond to them. So please do use that chat box. Rene, please go ahead and share your screen and go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to engaging with everybody that's here today. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a BEE specialist, transformation manager at Ngeli Enterprise Development. I've been in the BEE space as well as the CETA SDF space for over 12 years. I was on the ABP technical committee, and I'm on the ASDSA board, as well as I have done B-BBEE MDP and economic empowerment specialist. So I really hope that I can give you some insight into how BEE and skills development are very closely linked, and how and why it is so important that you understand it. If you find BEE confusing, nothing has actually changed more recently. However, it's the verification methodology and documentation, the documentary evidence that is submitted for audit, which changes. And this comes about when the regulatory body, being SANUS, conducts accreditation audits on an annual basis with the rating agencies. And then they adjust their policies and procedures in line with the guidelines from the SANUS accreditation body. So
Rene,
this,
can I just pose a question to you? So does that mean, because I don't know the mechanics of this, does that mean it'll be the agencies get this guidelines, this refinement on a one-by-one basis as they have a conversation with SANUS? So okay, they may have different versions of it depending on when they were last yes, at a meeting. Is that accurate?
So I think let me explain how SANUS operates, because that will give more context to understanding why it may be different in different rating agencies. So SANUS, being the accreditation body of the rating agencies for BEE, they have assessors who go out on an annual basis to the rating agencies, and they assess on a sample base. So they will select certain files which that rating agency has verified and issued certificates against over the last year. During their assessment on that, they may pick up things which they'll question and might or might not be in line with how it should be interpreted. And that is where odd things do come up during the year. So it's not an assessment of all the files, and each entity has different methodologies. So they might pick up a file this year and everything is fine because there's a particular scenario not in that file. However, when they get to a different client in a different part of the country, perhaps, or maybe even a different SANUS assessor, they may pick up different items. So if you could just think how many files and how much documentation is national related to BEE and all the certificates that are being issued. SANUS only verifies a small portion. So over the years, as they are picking up items which are not in line with the codes or the true intention of the codes, they issue that rating agency with a non-conformance. It is then the rating agency's duty to correct that and provide SANUS with methods on how, going forward, they will eliminate that discrepancy of interpretation, for example. So that is why on an annual basis, what you submitted for audit last year, there may be a tweak to it in the next year. And that is what industry is finding quite frustrating.
So, Rene, I mean, what I'm hearing, I used to be an accredited training provider, and our accrediting body was ASDSA. And I can recall that we never got clear guidelines on an ongoing basis from ASDSA that went to all of the SDPs around how we understand things. We'd normally only discover it when there was a verification visit. And then they'd say, we must do this and this and this. And that made it very difficult. But what it means for us then, in terms of B-BBEE, is that a different agency might give us a different response, depending on when they last got feedback from SANAS. Is that accurate?
That is possible. However, through associations like Association for BE Professionals, we're trying to engage with all stakeholders to come to a common understanding and interpretation. I will cover, I'll just briefly mention now the verification manual. In the past, there was a verification manual for the initial codes, etc. However, since the new codes have been issued, there is no verification manual which has further explanation and guidelines, excuse me, on how to verify. So yes, there's a lot of open to interpretation in the industry, and that is why it is confusing.
But I imagine, and let me get off the topic because I think I'm distracting you, but I imagine what you're talking about to us today will give us the most recent focus areas that seem to be prevailing.
Yes, I'm just going to go through the general, and then we can touch on the actual verification and look into that in a little bit more depth than you would find in just general research.
Cool. Thanks, Rene. Back to you then.
Okay, great. Okay, so BE and skills development, there is a definite linkage between the two. You have BE not being a legal requirement. And then again, also your CETA, your mandatory grant submission, not being an actual legal requirement. So why would you want to do BE? It's a priority element on the BE scorecard. And also, why would you want to do, apologies for that. The requirement is a key principle to the BE codes, and for a rating agency to be able to issue or rather award a score on your BE certificate. I do apologize. It is a requirement by the BE codes that you have an approved mandatory grant submission. So we all know the targets of the BE scorecard, what they are as a percentage of your leviable amounts. And also then there are different sectors. So one must be aware, for example, if you're in forestry, if you're in construction, then the codes have different targets and criteria. So you need to be aware of this. What I'm speaking to here relates to the general codes. Okay, so please take note of that.
Rene, just, sorry, pick up your points and there's some comments, I'll come back to them. You go ahead.
Okay, sure. So when a rating agency has not gotten approved WSP ATR, 0 points are awarded on the BE scorecard, regardless of the rand value you have actually spent on training initiatives. And then also be aware for BE, you cannot claim mandatory training, such as a forklift operator license renewal. However, you can claim if it's a first-time license. So the person doesn't have a license for that. It's his first time. That is upskilling the individual. However, a renewal is for him to continue in his practice. Yes, Andy.
Okay, so from John Arneson, with the uncertainty surrounding learnerships,
yes,
will the BE Commission review this principle? Number of Black people participating in learnerships, apprenticeships, and internships as a percentage of total employees. Do you have any thoughts on that? Any insights that you can share with us?
Unfortunately not. That is a topic that has not been brought up in the BE space that I'm aware of. It is something that needs to be brought to the table, and I can do that with ABP. I am on their technical committee, although not on the skills development element. I'm more on the ESD, but I can put it forward to the chairperson to please table that, because it is a matter that needs to be addressed urgently. So yes, I am aware of that. I do thank you for your comment. And once I receive a response from Association of BE Professionals, I will share with the ASDSA members so that we can all try and be on the same page as soon as possible, because that is really important.
Well, thanks, Rene. And the other comment is from Felicity Havenga, very similar to CETA, ETQS/accreditation challenges, different people assessing and verifying, etc. So small tweaks needing to happen periodically. And that's, I mean, exactly the point that you made. Cool. Thanks, Rene. Back to you then.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, so just to reiterate in terms of your BE and the skills development element being a priority element. So here, if an entity does not achieve the 40% of the total weighting points available, this is now excluding your bonus points, then whatever the final outcome is of the certificate, based on the score, the level will be dropped by 1 level. Okay, so it's essential generic entities achieve the 8 out of the 20 points, and the QSEs 10 out of the 25. Okay. Now the scorecard, as I mentioned, this is the generic scorecard. I'm not going to go into too much detail. However, if there are questions, please pop them on the chat box. It hasn't changed over the years. It's more about the verification thereof, which we're going to dive into shortly. So here we have the key principles, and this is now more the focus point, and I feel which may answer some of your questions. When aligning your training, one needs to take into account the BE looks into the EAP targets. So it's the adjusted EAP target. So not just the targets that the EAP as it is gazetted or reported, but it's adjusted where the white component is removed. And then you align your people according to the EAP, but also note that the score available on the scorecard is also then adjusted to the EAP target. So if you were to put all your employees, for example, all African female on training, you would never be able to achieve full points because the points are adjusted accordingly. I hope that makes sense.
Rene, just explain what EAP stands for, please.
Oh, sorry. The economically active population. It's just the reporting and what percentage of demographics, sort of male, female, and race, what percentage is economically active? Okay. And that's from Stats SA. Then CETA, as I mentioned, it's not a legal requirement, but for BE, it's essential. It's crucial for items such as if you are tendering, you're doing a license application, the mining sector and a liquor license, for example, they have a requirement that you need to have a BE certificate. If your entity is doing claims such as the AIS claims in the automotive industry, the DTIC, it is an essential component that you have a BE certificate. Okay, and then now recently what we found with the CETAs, and I think CETA is the first one that I'm aware of that has put this out, to apply for your discretionary grant, you need to submit a BE certificate. So there are other ways which the government parastatals are bringing in BE without making BE a legislative requirement. Okay. Your training initiatives, in particular your learnerships, your apprenticeships or internships, they need to be registered with the CETA. not necessarily your own entity SETA, but it can be any SETA as long as it's registered. Here, in terms of a learnership, it cannot be claimed as category D if it's not registered. And that will fall back to a category E, the result of which will be negative on your skills spend, because you won't be able to claim the stipend or the salary of that learner, and it will only be the cost component which will count. So if you just give some thought to extracting from your skills spend that stipend or the salary, can add up to a large rand value which you can't claim. So it is essential. We have recently in our own practice here found training providers not registering the learnerships. And we are now 8 months down the line and we're sitting with a problem. So please, it is essential that learnerships are registered as soon as possible. Okay. And then pivotal training. Pivotal training for BEE is essential. If you look at the codes, the two key criteria for a rating agency to issue or award points on the scorecard is an approved WSP ATR or mandatory grant submission, as well as the entity must have trained personnel or people in one or more of the SETA's pivotal or scarce skills. It doesn't necessarily need to be the full qualification. It can be a component of, such as a couple of modules or even one module of that qualification. Just need to show some intent that your entity is doing what it can to address the identified scarce and critical skills of the industry. Okay, so yes.
So when we were chatting yesterday, we were speaking about the difficulty of getting the SETA to approve mandatory grant reports. They take a long time, and you had some suggestions as to what we could do. Yes. Why don't you tell people about that?
Absolutely. And yes, there is a delay sometimes with SETAs, unfortunately, more often than not. And we hope this will be rectified going forward. However, to address this, if you have this challenge, for example, if you're being audited now and you have submitted your BEE, your mandatory grant application last year, but at this point, it is not yet approved. What I would recommend then is to submit your prior year's confirmation of approval of your submission. Submit a copy of your, you get an email which says you have submitted, acknowledgement that you've submitted, and then go onto your SETA portal. Take a screenshot which will show that your application is sitting in limbo, if I can say. It's not rejected, it's awaiting approval. So, and that if you take a screenshot, it will show the date and time on your screenshot, and the rating agency can then see that it's still in process. And they cannot, and it would be very unfair if a rating agency were to negatively affect your score because of that. It is not the entity's fault if the SETA is dragging their heels on an approval. So those are the evidence items I would submit for audit. So I'll just recap. It would be your prior year's approval letter, a copy of your current submission, and the screenshot of it's still awaiting approval, together with confirmation or acknowledgement of your submission. So those 4 items should cover you for the rating agency in terms of BEE.
Thanks, Rene. And then there's, you've got 8 minutes, 3 things. You've got 8 minutes left. So sure. You've got 2 questions.
Okay.
One from John Arneson, where can we get the latest EAP stats?
Okay, I'd be happy to share that with the ASDSA members. I will share that out to admin, who can then share it with the
We
members.
can maybe put it in the WhatsApp group.
I will also then show or provide a link to where it can be found in the future.
Thanks, Rene. Then the second one is from Anthony Ross. Says, Rene, maybe my question is not relevant for this platform. How important is this process within local government-specific municipalities? Must a municipality comply in terms of having a B-BBEE certificate? Do you have knowledge of that? Are you able to comment?
I do. Yes, government parastatals are supposed to do BEE. It is in the Gazette. I can provide further information if we can just get an email address, and I can liaise with you on that one.
Great, thanks. Back to you.
All right. I just want to cover quickly then, just in the essence of time, just to further on the key principles of the measurement. When it comes to absorption, there are bonus points available, 5 bonus points available for absorption. And absorption in the past used to be seen as a learner on a learnership, and then next year you put them on the next NQF level. However, this is not in line with the Gazette. And so SANAS indicated that, and the way forward is that anybody given permanent long-term employment, that then is your absorption. So it's undetermined period of time post completion of a learnership. That would be counted towards absorption. Okay.
And then just the long-term contract, you put in brackets risk. What do you mean by that?
Okay, so when you are, or if you were to give somebody a long-term contract, being maybe 3 years, depending on the industry, you might have a project and you employ somebody for a set period of time. Some rating agencies, and because there is no verification manual and guidelines on this topic, some rating agencies do accept a long-term contract such as 2 years, 3 years, but it is a risk because if you look at long-term employment, that means up until retirement age, so an undetermined period of time. So I would caution against trying to count on absorption points, because at any point in time, SANAS can say from this date forward, or if the verification manual is gazetted, from this date forward, this is how it's seen. So if you bank in on those points, you're going to find yourself in a difficult situation. That is why I would say it is a risk, and never count on bonus points for your BE scorecard. It is very risky.
And then there are 4 questions sitting in the chat room, and you've got like 4 minutes. So let me go through them. Let's see if we can get somewhere. So from, in fact, more. Percy Manuel, on-the-job training and non-accredited training, how is the costing reported?
On-the-job training is a category G, and a category G is an hourly rate of the trainer. So if you have a manager training a group of 10 people, it's that hourly rate of the manager divided by 10, and then you account that portion, that 10th, per race and gender who attended the training. And you need to have attendance registers that have race and gender on as well. Okay.
Then Sharon Boyson, how does non-accredited training align and or not with BEE?
Accredited training and non-accredited training, yes, they are different. I will share the training matrix. It's just a different method and categorized. So your category E and F are capped, but your accredited training, that's not capped. So it's basically through BEE promoting that industry engage more in accredited training rather than unaccredited training. So it's preferable to have accredited.
It's here, for bonus points, do you use the targeted 5% even if you don't have more learners due to RAND value target.
Sorry, Andy, can you repeat that?
So, she says, for bonus points, do you use the target at 5%, even if you have more learners due to the RAND value target?
The percentage doesn't change. It remains the same. So it's 5% of your employees, not the number of learners.
Okay. Then Sharon saying, I'm a micro enterprise and have an affidavit. Some of my clients do not want to accept this. What do you recommend?
Okay. There is, if you go on to the BEE Commissioner's website under frequently asked questions, or alternative, the publications page, you'll find a document there. And Andy, I don't mind sharing this as well for just ease of access to it. It's a document which is put out to confirm that an affidavit is a valid BEE credential. Okay, so I will share that with you, which you can attach to your affidavit to give out.
Okay, so Rene, we just 1 minute to go, but there are 3 more questions. So I think if people need to leave at 10, thank you for joining us. We will put the CPD point link in the chat box for you. Angelique, if you could do that now. And Rene, if you're comfortable just to keep on answering questions for another couple of minutes.
Absolutely. Whoever would like to stay on, I'm most comfortable with that. No problems.
So then, Richie, again, for FSC, you still have the old codes. Absorption definition has not updated. How do you calculate the employed absorption?
Okay. I'm going to be absolutely honest right now, and I will look into that and happily respond, and we can correspond on email. There are so many different sectors that I don't want to answer incorrectly at this point. So if you can just bear with me, I will get back to that one.
Okay. Then Melanie, the VAs don't want those contracts, not even 2 years. Okay, that's interesting.
Yes, that's what I was saying about it being a risk, that the different verifications see it differently.
So Anthea is saying, kind of request, please provide in the WhatsApp group your email address so that you can contact you directly. If you're comfortable with that, we'll do that.
Sure.
And there's some more. Sharon, I think we should have some workshops around the subject. There's obviously many more technical issues that need answering. Thank you, Rene. This is very informative. I think that's the questions, Rene. I think we're out of time.
No problem.
So thank you very much.
There is definitely a lot more I can share, and I'd happily share.
That's great. Then, colleagues, I think we are done. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.